into the next section of Revelation. If you remember, we actually last week we ended with seeing the six of the seals open and what they meant and what everybody was looking for and so forth. But today we're going to go into chapter 8, and chapter 8 opens up with the seventh seal being opened, and then starts with it starts with four of the trumpets being blown. And so we're going to kind of see a little bit about what is being talked about here, and we're going to kind of add some scripture to maybe give us a bigger idea or understanding of what he's talking about in these. So here we go. Starting in Revelation chapter 8 in verse 1. It says, when he opened the seventh seal, there was a silence in heaven for about a half an hour. Then I saw the seven angels who stand in the presence of God. Seven trumpets were given to them. Another angel with a gold incense burner came and stood at the altar. He was given a large amount of incense to offer with the prayers of all the saints on the golden altar in front of the throne. The smoke of the incense with prayers of the saints went up in the presence of God from the angel's hand. The angel took the incense burner and filled it with fire from the altar and hurled it to the earth. There were thunders, rumblings, lightnings, and earthquake. And the seven angels who had the seven trumpets prepared to blow them. The first angel blew his trumpet, and hail and fire mixed with blood were hurled to the earth. So a third of the earth was burned up, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. The second angel blew his trumpet, and something like a great mountain ablaze with fire was hurled into the sea. So a third of the sea became blood, and a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. The third angel blew his trumpet, and a great star blazing like a torch fell from heaven. It fell on a third of the rivers and springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood, and the third of the waters became wormwood. So many of the people died from the waters because they had been made bitter. The fourth angel blew his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars. So that the third of them were darkened, and a third of the day was without light, and the night as well. I looked, and I heard an eagle flying in mid-heaven, saying in a loud voice, "Woe, woe, woe to those who live on the earth, because of the remaining trumpet blasts that the three angels are about to sound." It actually sounds pretty exciting as we go through this, and as he gets into this this trying to and actually it brings about judgment. And so I want to kind of get into this as we look. Now, if you notice that in the first 6 verses, it talks the seventh seal is open, and there was silence in the heaven for about a half an hour. And then John sees 7 angels who stand in the presence of God, and 7 trumpets were given to them. Okay, another angel with a gold incense burner, came and stood at the altar. Now, I want to point out a significance with the altar. If you go back and you look through Exodus, and also at the starting of when fire came down from heaven and started the fire on the altar, anything that touched the altar was made holy. Okay, so here's what I'm telling you is that the prayers were mixed with the incense, and the fire was taken off of the altar. So those prayers, along with that, the smoke that rose before God, is holy to him. And he hurled those prayers. So we're talking about him beginning the answers to those prayers of the saints. And so we got to walk away with that, because our prayers to him are important to him, and he is going to answer those prayers. And of course, as we look at this, a lot of it deals with, just what has been going on in the saints' lives, and some of them have been killed, and they were under the altar, if you remember, and they were to stay there a little bit longer. We'll get into all that. They were to stay there a little bit longer, and until he answered those prayers, and until he finished the judgments that were coming, that he was bringing on the earth. So they were given a large amount of incense to offer with the prayers of the saints. That's the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints went up in the prayers of the saints went up in the presence of God. And so he was smelling this aroma of the incense and the prayers mixed together. Okay, the smoke brought up those prayers before him, and he was bound and determined that he was going to answer the prayers of his people. And that is amazing to me. This imagery is so amazing to me. The angel took that, and that incense burner, and filled it full of fire, we just talked about, and hurled it to the earth, so that it begins to carry out the answers to those prayers. The angel hurled it to the earth. The angel was given the trumpets and prepared to blow. Okay, so they had this seventh seal is blown, and as that is blown, this incense is hurled to the earth to answer the prayers of the saints. And the first angel with a trumpet, gets ready to blow. All the angels get ready to blow. Okay, but let's look at back, if you will, real quick, and take a look at some of the references. Let's go back to Luke chapter 1. Luke chapter 1, verse 19, and take a look here. Luke chapter 1, in verse 19, it says, the angel answered him, I am Gabriel, who stands in the presence of God, and I was sent to speak to you and to tell you this good news. Okay, and so what was the good news? Look at verse 20. It says, now listen, you will become silent and unable to speak until the day these things take place, because you did not believe my words, which will be fulfilled in their proper time. Okay, so here he is, and Gabriel is bringing this message back, saying that God has heard your prayers, and you know what? He's going to answer these prayers, but because you didn't believe, you're going to remain silent until it's done. Okay, let's go back and take a look at Revelation chapter 15. Revelation chapter 15, verse 1. Just a minute here. Let me get to that. Revelation 13, verse 1. Let me get here. Okay, it says 15, verse 1. Sorry, I got the wrong one. It says, then I saw another great and awesome, awe-inspiring sign in the heaven. 7 angels with the seven last plagues, for with them God's wrath will be completed. Okay, now plagues are brought into this. And that brings another area to mind, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. But Revelation chapter 5 is another place I want to look at. Revelation 5, and it would be verse 8. Revelation 5:8. Let me get there. It says, when he took the scroll, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before them. Each one had a harp and gold bowls filled with incense, which are the prayers of the saints. Once again, there we see that the prayers of the saints, and we also see that he answers those prayers. He keeps those prayers. Those prayers don't go away. He keeps them, and at the proper time, he answers those prayers. Now let's go to Exodus. let's go to Exodus, because I reminded you that we've heard of plagues before, and so let's go to Exodus chapter 30. Exodus chapter 30, verse 1. It says, "You are to make an altar for the burning of incense. Make it of acacia wood." Okay, and he goes on to describe that. And so this was the coal that he took it off of. Let's look at Psalm chapter 14. Psalm chapter 14. Excuse me. And let's get there. Psalm chapter 14. Verses 1 and 2. It says, "The fool says in his heart, God does not exist. They are corrupt, their actions are revolting, and there is no one who does good. The Lord looks down from heaven on the earth human race, to see if there is one who is wise, one who seeks God." Okay, so that's what he's looking for. And as he does all of this, he's actually looking for restoration. He's actually looking for those that would turn to him and so forth, and get saved, if you will. Okay, and so let's finish up in that particular passage with go to Revelation chapter 16. Revelation 16, and in verse 18. Verse 18. Let me get there. Verse 18. And let's start in verse 17. It says, Then the seventh poured out his bowl into the air, and a loud voice came out of the sanctuary from the throne, saying, "It is done." There were lightning and rumblings and thunders, and a severe earthquake occurred like no other since man had on the face of the earth. So great was the earthquake. Okay, so we're just kind of going through all the things that took place there. Okay, so and he says that in the opening of the seal. I went too far here. In the opening of the seal, okay, because in verse 5 and down it says, the angel took the incense burner, filled it with fire from the altar, and hurled it to the earth. There were thunders, rumblings, lightnings, and an earthquake. Okay, and an earthquake, and that's exactly what's being described there, as we looked at Revelation chapter 16, verse 8. So we're going to see this again. Now I want to get into the first trumpet when it's open. It says the first angel blew his trumpet, and hail and fire mixed with blood were hurled to the earth, so that a third of the earth was burned up, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. So here we have it. Okay, on the first trumpet, the first angel blew, and blew his trumpet, and hail and fire and mixed with blood hurled to the earth. A third of the earth was burned up, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all of the grass. Okay, so let's turn to Exodus. Remember, I was talking about the plagues. Let's turn to Exodus chapter 9. Exodus chapter 9. Okay, Exodus chapter 9, and we're going to take a look at verses 22 through 29. 22 through 29. And it says, Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand toward heaven, and let there be hail throughout the land of Egypt, on man and beast and every plant of the field in the land of Egypt." So Moses stretched out his staff toward heaven, and the Lord sent thunder and hail, lightning struck the earth, and the Lord rained hail on the land of Egypt. The hail with lightning flashes through it was so severe that nothing like it heard in the land of Egypt since it had had become a nation. Throughout the land of Egypt, the hail struck down everything in the field, both man and beast. The hail beat down on every plant of the field and shattered every tree in the field. The only place it didn't hail was in the land of Goshen, where the Israelites were. Now listen to that carefully, okay, because that's described almost verbatim of what we see in Revelation on this first trumpet. And as we look at that, I want you to see that it says that it hit all of Egypt except for Goshen. Well, Goshen's an important part because Goshen is where God's people were. It's where the Jews were. He protected them from that. Isn't that amazing? As we look at that, let's look also at Ezekiel. Ezekiel chapter 38. Ezekiel chapter 38, and take a look at a passage there. Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 22. Okay, so let's get to verse 22, and it says, just here, I'm having trouble seeing some of these numbers. Indication I'm getting older, right? Okay, so 21, okay, there we go, 22. I will execute judgment on him with plagues and bloodshed. I will pour out for a torrential rain, hailstone, fire, and brimstone on him, as well as his troops and the many people who are with him. Okay, so he uses these against his enemies, against the enemies of his people, and so forth. So let's look at the second trumpet. At the second trumpet, it says the second trumpet blew his trumpet, or excuse me, the second angel blew his trumpet. Something like a great mountain ablaze with fire was hurled into the sea. So a third of the sea became blood. A third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. How amazing is this? Okay, how amazing is this? So let's look at, if you notice, the second trumpet was sounded, the second angel blew, okay, and something like a great mountain ablaze with fire was hurled into the sea, and the sea became blood. A third of the sea that became blood, a third of the living creatures, okay, died. A third of the ships were destroyed. So let's look at Ezekiel again. Ezekiel chapter 14 this time. Ezekiel chapter 14. And we're going to take a look at some more of this, okay? Ezekiel 14. Get back here. Ezekiel chapter 14. Okay, Ezekiel 14, verse 19. Okay. Or verse 19. Or if I send a plague into the land and pour out my wrath on it with bloodshed to wipe out both man and animal from it, even if Noah, Daniel, and Job were in it, and as I live, the declaration of the Lord God, they could not deliver their son or daughter. They would deliver only themselves by their righteousness. Okay, so there it is. Okay, and so we see this dying taking place in the sea as we see this go on. But let's look at Exodus. Okay, let's look at Exodus, and it would be Exodus. Excuse me, chapter 7. Exodus chapter 7. Go back to Exodus chapter 7 and look at this. Exodus 7. Pages are sticking together. Okay, Exodus 7, and it would be verses 14 through 18. It says, then the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh is unresponsive. He refuses to let people go. Go to Pharaoh in the morning. When you see him walking out to the water, stand ready to meet him by the bank of the Nile. Take in your hand the staff that turned into a snake. Tell him, the Lord, the God of Hebrews, has sent me to tell you, let my people go, so that they may worship me in the wilderness. But so far, what the Lord says, he is how you will know that I am the Lord. Watch, I will strike the water in the Nile with the staff of my hand, and it will turn to blood. The fish in the Nile will die. The river will stink, and the Egyptians will be unable to drink the water. There you go. Okay, so we like I said, we've seen this with the plagues as we look at these things happen, as we look at all of this going on. So that was the second trumpet that we're looking at. The third trumpet is the angel blew his trumpet, and a great star blazing like torches fell from the heaven. A third of if I fell on the third, it fell on the rivers and the springs. The name of the star was wormwood. Okay, and a third of the water became wormwood. Many of the people died because the water became bitter. Let's look at Isaiah chapter 9. Okay, Isaiah chapter 9, and take a look at this, because you know what? Throughout history, he's given us signs and explanations to show us actually what will come in the future and what we're seeing this happen. Okay, Isaiah chapter 9, verse 15. Verse 15. Okay, let's look at this. Okay, it says the head is the elder and honored one. The tail is the prophet, the lying preacher. Okay, did I have that right? Excuse me, that was Jeremiah. I'm sorry. Jeremiah 9, chapter verse 15. Jeremiah 9:15. It says, therefore, this is what the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, says. I am about to feed these people wormwood and give them poisonous waters to drink. Okay, so there you go. Once again, you see that this throughout history, that God has responded to those that don't heed his call in similar ways. Okay, let's look now at Exodus chapter 15. Excuse me, Exodus chapter 15. And we'll go back here and take a look at this. Exodus 15. Let me get there. Exodus 15. Okay, I'm close. Exodus 15. I don't know why the only time the pages stick together is when you're in a hurry. Turn to that passage, and then it becomes kind of a sticky situation. Okay, starting at verse 22 of 15. And it says, then Moses led Israel on from the Red Sea, and they went out so that the wilderness of Sur. They journeyed for 3 days in the wilderness without water. They came to Marah, but could not drink the water at Marah because it was bitter. That is why it was called Marah. The people grumbled to Moses, what are we going to drink? So he cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree. It says, when he drew it into the water will become drinkable. Okay, so God made a way for them to drink this water because it was bitter. It was bitter, and they would have died if they drank it. Okay, so that's another thing that we looked at that was one of the things that the Israelites dealt with, if you will. The fourth angel blew his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars. They were darkened. Let's look at Isaiah chapter 13. Isaiah chapter 13, and we'll see this again. Isaiah chapter 13. Isaiah chapter 13. Okay, we'll get there. We'll get there. I'm in Isaiah now. Isaiah 13. Oh. Isaiah 13. Went too far. Isaiah 13, verse 10. It says, indeed, the stars of the sky and the constellations will not give their light. The sun will be darkened when it rises, and the moon will not shine. Okay, then Amos, let's go back, let's go to Amos and take a look at a passage there. Amos chapter 8, verses 9 through 10. Amos chapter 8, verses 9 through 10. It says, and in that day, this is the Lord's declaration this is a declaration of the Lord God. I will make the sun go down at noon, and I will darken the land in the daytime, and I will turn your feasts into mourning and all of your songs into lamentations. I will cause everyone to wear sackcloth and every head to be shaved, and I will make the grief like mourning for only son, and its outcome like a bitter day. Okay, so let's also look at Exodus chapter 10. Look at Exodus chapter 10, and we can see this again among the plagues of the Exodus. Exodus chapter 10. Exodus chapter 10, and we're going to be taking a look at verses 21 through 22 or 23, 21 through 22 or 23. Exodus 10. Okay, Exodus chapter 10. This page is... Exodus chapter 10, verses 21 through 23. Verses 21 through 23. Okay, it says, then the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand toward the heaven, and there will be darkness over the land of Egypt, a darkness that can be felt. So Moses stretched out his hand towards the heaven, and there was thick darkness throughout the land of Egypt for 3 days. One person could not other for 3 days. They did not move from where they were. Yet the Israelites had light where they lived. Okay, so once again, the Egyptians did not have light. Okay, they couldn't see. They couldn't see each other, and it was a darkness that could be felt. And yet, in Goshen, where God's people were, they had light. They could see. And so anyway, I won't go into the Hebrew as far as what dark, that the word used for dark and lightness there, but okay, I will. The word for darkness is koshek, and it actually means evil, destruction, and it means all of this. Okay, that was the darkness that could be felt. That was koshek. For light, it was or, and it actually means to be happy. It actually means to be happy. So back to Revelation chapter 8. Once again, we're going to finish up this chapter 8. In verse 13, John looked and saw an eagle flying and pronouncing woes to those facing the next three, well, all seven trumpets. and they're facing from the 5th to the 7th at this point. And the eagle is flying, he's soaring, he's flying, and he gives 3 woes. Woe, woe, woe to those who live on the earth, because the remaining trumpet blast that these 3 angels are about to sound. And so there's going to be some difficult times for them coming up. And so let's look at Revelation chapter 9, verse 12. Chapter 9, verse 12. And it says this. It says, the first woe has passed. There are still 2 more woes to come after this. Amazing passage. And you know what? Once again, I've written all of these references down in the description of the video. And so you could go back and search out all of them for yourself and take a look at the references as well. I hope you do that, and I hope you enjoy the study. Thank you so much for coming and for being with us. You have a great and wonderful